Hey guys, it is day 31, so that is love on the last week of when. And I had the craziest dream. And I didn't realize how crazy it was until I started recording it. So I have like a dream diary. With my dream, I'll either write a story about it. If it's really impactful, I'll write it in my journal. Or I'll whip out my phone and I'll just talk into the voice recorder and record it. And I do that to record all of my dreams. Especially the really impactful ones. And today I had the wildest dream that I don't even know. So basically how I can explain it is like the dream started halfway through it. And I actually don't even want to talk about the whole dream. But basically, the dream was called like Gro-up, right? Gro-up. And it was like this word that was just going off in my mind again and again and again. Go up, grow up, go up, grow up. And I was going up this tower. Basically, it takes place in this tower. But this tower was like not a normal tower. It started out, basically it was after, I guess it was the afterlife. I don't know if it was the afterlife, but nobody could die, right? But what happened is we had all these abilities, and it was just like normal life. But what happened is we would get abilities, not from gaining them, but from actually turning off these filters, right? So the first few levels, you gain the awareness of the filters, and then you gain the ability to turn them on and off. And then after that, you go through these different levels, and each level symbolized a filter. And the thing is, living here, we had all the filters turned on. There were only 2 that weren't on. Then we came down here to turn on the last 2, and then the rest of everything else was about just going back up to turn them off, right? So we had come down the tower, and we were trying to remember how to get back up it. So, and I say tower, that's not really what this was. It was like, there was levels. It was like levels in a video game, like a dimension. And so like the first level was like the normal world, right? And only a few people could hear the voice. And then the second level was like nicer. It was like more space agey. And then the third level was like nature. And then the fourth level is when it started getting really weird. It's when it started getting into the sky, and it was just these giant floating towers with bridges all across them. And they would start going up in a spiral, and there was all these different towers. And you had to like go from one bridge to the next and cross all these bridges and go. And there was these rooms. And I started in the story because I got to the end of level 10. But in order to get to end level 10 and get to level 11, I needed somebody to help me. Because I had gone as far as I could go by myself. And I remember being like kind of frustrated from that. And then when I started going back down to find other people, because I hadn't seen people for like years, like 6 or 7 years. And the last time I saw a person was like on level 6, and I'd gone through 4 levels. And each of the levels were exponentially more dense, right? I remember especially level 8 was very traumatic for me, because it was the level where we went through the filter of time. And it was a very weird point, because what happened was when I started coming back down, and this, guys, it's weird. I'm trying to explain this in the video, but it makes perfect sense in my head. So I'm going to try and explain it. But yeah, basically what it was like every single person was like a 3-dimensional object. And I know you're like, wait, obviously we're like a 3-dimensional object. But no, I'm saying like to the point where like I had this filter where I could literally see every single person or object and how it connected with everything else in 3 dimensions. Like I could see the X-axis, the Y-axis, and the Z-axis. And based upon my connection, and what was crazy is like I was connected to them. So when I looked at a person a certain way, so for instance, let's say I saw like a woman and I thought of her like with a kid, and I was like, oh, is she a mom? The y-axis would begin to move up. But then if I thought, oh, I wonder what she was like when she was like a young girl, the y-axis would begin to move down. And then the x-axis was like, okay, how am I going to interact with them? Am I going to talk to them like I am a grown adult young man? Am I going to pretend and like talk to them like I'm a younger kid? Am I going to be more educated? Am I wearing a suit? And I realized their impression of me would change the x-axis, right? And then the z-axis was like where we correlated in time. That, I don't know if that makes sense, but the thing is, what was crazy is like the z-axis, you would think like, oh, well, it's absolute, we're all meeting the same people in the same time. It wasn't like that. You would notice like some people would, a majority, because the z-axis, the energy, there was each of these nodes, there were nodes on each of these axes. And on the z-axis, which I guess was time, it wasn't really time though. The best way to describe it is time, because really it was like the connection of time through memory, right? And I had gotten, so on level 8, I was able to turn that filter off. So I could willingly move forwards and backwards on the z-axis with complete control of it. But most people, where they were on the z-axis was involuntary. All the filters, the only difference when you turned it on and off was whether or not you controlled it with awareness or it was involuntary. And so the z-axis was like our ability to access time. But level 3 was our ability to access memory. And apparently, when you turned off both of them, you like could move in different parts of the vertices. I know this is not making any sense to somebody like who can't visually see it, because it was very visual, and like it just made sense to me. Like I was in the dream and it made sense, and I was just could see everybody like that. Like everybody was just these collections of these vertices, and it was how they viewed, not even how they viewed me, it was like how I let them view me. It was different because I still had control over the x-axis, but it was only because I was able to turn it on and off. But if I kept it on, it was almost like it was like keeping things on created an attachment with the environment. But when you turned it off, you were no longer attached to the environment. And then you began to formulate the environment based upon your will. That's the only way I can explain it. It was a wicked, wicked dream. It was a crazy dream, right? And so, and I haven't even talked about the story. I'm just talking about like how the dream was interfacing, because it was normal. It was completely normal, and I was just taking for granted, because level 10 and level 9, the only way I can explain them is like they were beyond the description of time and space. Like that's the only way I can explain it. Like they were physical places, like they were physical, and I could see them and I could visually exist within them. But like things like color, things like distance, like weight, they didn't exist there. It was just pure space. Like the only way I can explain it, it was like quantum space. It was like everything was existed and folded on each other, but was distinct and different. And guys, in the dream, even now as I'm describing it to you, it makes sense to me. Like it just made sense. It was like, oh yeah, no, this makes sense. But as I'm describing it, it's like, it's beyond words. It can't, the best way I can explain it is almost like a video game. Like, you know how like in a video game, you turn on a video game and you have a save file, like you have the same screen, but you can go through different, like, you know, to even take it to a deeper level. Let's say you have the same monitor, the same computer screen in a video game, but you can put different games on there. And then based off of the different games, you can go to different save files within the game. That's what it was like. That's the best way to describe it. But it wasn't something that was going, like I was the monitor. that's the thing, is like I was the monitor. The monitor wasn't something I was viewing the world through. Like I was in it. That's the only way to describe it. Anyway, I know this sounds probably like totally Looney Tunes, but yeah, it was just a dream I had. It was a dream I had, and so after that, the focus was. But the thing is, going up the tower, I couldn't see things that way. I only saw things that way when I started coming down. That was what was crazy, is that going up, it just seemed the same. Like level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6, all of the levels seemed the same as I was going up. They didn't seem different as I was going up. It's only when I came down that I started realizing how different each of the levels were. That was the weirdest part about it. And so I got to this place where, in order to like grow up, I wrote it in my phone and I said grow up, it said group. And I was like, grow up, Group, grow up, group. And I realized what was crazy is I met someone in the dream who had gotten past level 10, and they're like, oh yeah, like you should figure out how to unlock the level 10 thing, but then you're just gonna end up back down here. And I was like, well, why is that? And they're like, because in order to get to level 11 and then eventually to level 12, we have to get everybody else up there. And I was like, what? They're like, oh yeah, like in order to unlock a level 11 and level 12, we have to get everybody up there. And I was like, everyone? They're like, everyone. And I was like, how are we gonna do that? There's some people who are still stuck on level 1. Like most people hadn't got past level 6. And the most advanced, like powerful people were stuck on level 7. Because level 8 is like a total B. And I was like one of the few people who had gone past level 8. Like the amount of people who'd gone past level 8 in the dream, it was like a handful of people. I was like, if only a handful of people are getting past level 8 and it is this super traumatic event, and everybody at level 7 realizes that, and most people can't even make it to level 7, how are we going to convince all these people to go past it? And it's like, well, we have to prepare the way for them. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. How are we going to prepare the way for them? And then he just said, you have to figure out how to unlock level 10 before I can explain it to you. Because I realized when I went back down and I was trying to explain everything that I'd seen on level 8, level 9, and level 10 to everyone on level 7, I'm like vice down, all the way down. They said the person you're looking for is going to be on level 2 or level 3. And I was like, they're not going to understand me at all. People on level 7 barely understand me. And people on level 6 and level 5 are lost. And people on those higher levels, people on the lower levels don't understand people on the higher levels. So how the heck am I supposed to do that? And they just said that's the only way. You have to prepare the way for them. And they just kept saying that. You have to prepare the way. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And they're like, the only way you can beat the level is you have to get the others involved. And it has to be everyone. They're like, everyone. No one's going to be left behind. And I was like, and that was just the craziest part of the dream. And it was like this tower. It was just this giant tower. And we were all going up this giant tower. It was so weird. And it was so cool because level 6 is when they were like these sky islands. Level 7 was like these metal teleporters, and we went to like each of these conduit blocks. And then level 8 and level 8 was like traumatic. It was like a desert. It was awful. Level 8 was like awful. Like even thinking about level 8, it was awful. It was like so hard. And the thing is, the person said, you need to level 8, which is where I learned how to like dilate time. They said the reason is because you're one of the few people who did it as fast as you did it, and you did it alone. And no one who's completed level 8 did level 8 alone. Even though it's possible to do level 8 alone, nobody did it alone, but you did it alone. And I was like, well, why was I the one that did it alone? And they're like, that was just your way. But now in order to beat level 10, you can't go alone anymore. You have to find somebody else. But I realized there's a difference between relationships, connections, and attachments. And I learned how to turn off each of those. But level 10 is about turning off, I guess, separation, which creates something called a bond. And level 10 is about revealing bonds. And apparently bonds were invisible to me. And I was like, I don't know how to create bonds. It's like, the reason you were able to advance is because you don't have any bonds to slow you down. But now in order to get past level 10, you have to create bonds. But I can't perceive bonds. I can only perceive connections, attachments, and relationships. But they're like, these bonds are a combination of these things, but they're also relative based upon where the people exist within the Z, Y, and X axis, which represents the idea of an attachment, a relationship, and a bond. And a connection. It was really weird. It was a freaking crazy dream. It was really weird dream. That's the day 31 update. I know that sounds like Looney Tunes, but I just got to put that out there. Because I was sitting in Deseret Industries, and I had been really struggling with this whole challenge. And I was standing there. I had just finished up the manuscript for the book, and I'd submitted it. And I started seeing like this timeline of all my life. And I felt like my success was inevitable. Like, I don't even, like, the thing is, and it was like success of what? It's like whatever I wanted. It's not even like success as this misnomer of whatever. It was like whatever I deem as success will happen. And it was just this feeling of like insane confidence. It was insane. Like, I was standing there in Deseret Industries, and I literally felt like at that moment, this was literally like, I was in there, I walked out of the store, and I started filming this. So this was like maybe 20 minutes ago. I just had this feeling of like the very best version of me that has ever existed is right now. And it was crazy. It was just the most insane feeling. Like, but then being able to see things, it was like there was this logic to it. It wasn't just a feeling. It was like I could look, and I was thinking about all these doomsday scenarios, and I said, what's the worst, hardest, like most catastrophic way things could work out? Like, what would be deemed failure? And even my failure was a success. And I was like, I can't fail. And it was just the craziest feeling. It was like, oh, I can't fail. I'm literally at this point in my life where the universe has shot me with everything, and I survived, and I got back up. So it's like, outside of dying, or like even like if I suffered some critical injury, that would only help me towards what I wanted. And it was just like, it was nuts. It was nuts. It was the craziest feeling. And I could just see it. It was like, if you got a brain injury, your perception of success would change. If you got sick, it was just like there's no way you would get sick. It was just, when I look at my life, it's like all there is success. It was so weird. And like, I'm talking to you guys now, and it was just after this dream I had. So I know nobody's probably gonna look at this video, but it will be here for my posterity, for my kids and other people. Day 31 of the challenge, so they'll know. The day I knew I was going to win. I'm like, it's crazy that I can say like, I know it. Like, looking at every variable, it's like, there's no way I can't win. It's super cool. So it's like, I just have to keep going. I just have to keep going. But even if I don't go, it's like, even that will lead to a success eventually. And that's like the worst version of it. And I was like, well, I'm not going to pick that. Why would I not do that? It was just crazy. It was really crazy, man. Super wicked dream. And we're just going up this tower. I want to write a story about it properly, but I don't want this video to get too long. So I'm going to cut it off now. But yeah, I'm just walking to go donate plasma. And I've already won. It's so weird. It's so cool. So cool.